After my wife survived stage 1 uterine cancer, she became determined to live life to the fullest. We started taking trips to Europe and enjoying new experiences, and everything seemed perfect, until she asked for a hall pass to sleep with a coworker. She said she didn't want to miss any opportunities and insisted on it, despite my refusal. The next day, she apologized for putting the decision entirely on me and told me she had already made up her mind. To help take the burden off, she booked a hotel for a party her coworkers were throwing as a send-off for this guy and planned to spend the night with him. She expects me to be waiting when she returns and has promised to answer any questions I have afterward, but not before. She won't reveal his identity because she knows I'll obsess over him, which, to be honest, is pretty accurate. She truly believes that knowing less will make it easier for me to handle. Though this contradicts her offer to tell me everything later. I think she assumes I won't actually want to ask anything, or that she simply won't tell me. A part of me acknowledges that she's been honest and has been through a lot since her cancer diagnosis, so maybe I should let it happen. I can't fully grasp what she went through, and I understand how it might have changed her mental outlook. However, another part of me wants to put my foot down and say this isn't going to happen. Consequences be damned. Her best friend even called me callous for considering saying no, saying I couldn't possibly understand her experience. I struggle to believe she's willing to risk our 20-plus years of marriage over a guy with whom she's had no relationship outside of work. Maybe I should just call her bluff, but part of me wonders if she's serious about all this. This version keeps the essence of the situation while being more concise and easier to follow. Let me know if you'd like further adjustments. I know I won't throw away our marriage over one encounter, but I'm completely torn about what to do. At times, I empathize with her, and then moments later, I feel angry. Part of me desperately wants to know who this guy is, what he looks like, what makes him so captivating to her. Is he just a safe option? Is he married? Does his wife know? Am I being heartless for considering saying no? What can I even do besides walking away? She seems to think that because this will be a one-time thing and she'll never see him again, it won't really impact me or our marriage in the long run. But I'm stuck between either accepting it and never viewing her the same way again, or going through a divorce at 54. Neither option is appealing. I don't know what's going through her mind, and I can't fully understand how her experience with cancer has affected her. I also don't think she truly believes I would leave over this. I had hoped that my strong opposition would make her stop and reconsider, but it didn't. I told her I was firmly against it, and that I didn't know how I would feel about her if she went through with it. Her response was the same. This is for me. It's a one-time thing. What can I say to help you deal with it? You'll get over it. We're meant to be together regardless of the situation. Leading up to Saturday, she was preparing to go meet her coworkers, though in reality, it was to sleep with this guy. I asked her to text me when she was heading to the bar, and when she did, I asked if she was really going through with it. Her response, "I'm not answering any more questions tonight. I'll see you tomorrow." That was the breaking point. I realized this had gone too far, so I blocked her. Then, I did something either incredibly stupid or possibly brilliant. I went to the bar where their get-together was happening. Well, not the bar itself, but I sat on a transit bench across the street. This version provides a clearer flow while capturing the same emotions and conflict. Let me know if you'd like further changes. I waited for what felt like forever, replaying everything that led up to this moment in my head. I felt like I needed to know who this guy was, maybe to compare myself to him, to understand what he had that I didn't. It was driving me crazy, not knowing what made him so special that my wife would risk ruining our marriage over him. After what seemed like an eternity, I saw a woman I recognized from my wife's office leave the bar and get into a cab. Soon after, more people started coming out, and eventually a group emerged, hugging and shaking hands with a man. I assumed this was him. I didn't see my wife, and briefly hoped she had changed her mind. I unblocked her on my phone, but there were no messages. Then, as the goodbyes were said and people dispersed, the guy stood outside for a few minutes alone, and then my wife walked out. She looked around, took his hand, and they started walking away together. Of all the emotions I had been cycling through, nervousness, sadness, anger, it was disgust that hit me hardest. This guy was short, overweight, and bald, everything I couldn't have prepared for. I felt sick, like a voyeur watching this unfold from the shadows. Still, I followed them until they reached the hotel, and then I turned around and went home. The next morning, I woke up and put a lock on the master bedroom door. I moved her things to the spare room and left a note asking her to find other accommodations as soon as possible. Later, I visited a lawyer friend who gave me some solid advice and referred me to a few divorce attorneys, making the introductions. Since around 11 a.m., my wife had been calling me non-stop. Once blocked, her calls went straight to voicemail. I listened to the first couple of messages, but felt nothing, except some satisfaction as her concern grew when she couldn't reach me. This version keeps the flow intact while streamlining the narrative for clarity and impact. Let me know if you'd like to tweak anything further. I didn't want to go home, but I had left in such a hurry that I didn't plan for an overnight stay. I got home around 9 and, following my friend's advice, started recording the interaction. I was halfway up the stairs when she came out of the family room, asking what was going on and if we could talk. She said, "I thought we talked about this." I simply replied, "I'm not interested in discussing this tonight," and went to bed. When I didn't respond to her through the door, she eventually left me alone. I felt a bit childish for not talking to her and shutting the door, but I just couldn't face her. On Monday, I got up and got ready for work. She was waiting for me and asked if we could talk about getting back to normal. I told her, "You've been doing all the talking for both of us this past week. Why don't you keep going?" Then I left for work. I had an appointment with the attorneys my friend recommended, but unfortunately, my lawyer wasn't available for a few days. That meant I had to face the reality of living with my wife in the meantime, something I wasn't looking forward to. The last thing I wanted was to have a conversation about our relationship. When I got home, I was ambushed. Her friends and my mother-in-law were there. Instead of showing any remorse, they decided that the best approach was to overwhelm me. I was basically berated by the entire group, with her best friend leading the charge. They kept saying things like, "She's been through so much. You don't know what it's like to face something like this. It was a one-time thing. At least she told you. She could have hidden it, and she'll never see the guy again." My personal favorite was when they told me I was an a-hole for what I'd been putting her through these last couple of days. As wrong as it might sound, I had a smirk on my face the entire time. I couldn't believe the situation. This version maintains the key elements of the situation while presenting it more succinctly and clearly. Let me know if you need further changes. I found myself being berated by my in-laws and my soon-to-be ex-wife's best friend, who called me an a-hole for not agreeing with her affair. After they finished, I asked if they were done, then turned to my wife and asked if there was anyone else in her circle of friends she hadn't yet told about this. I calmly informed them all that I planned to sit down with their husbands and let them know how they were verbally abusing me, shaming me, and trying to coerce me into staying with a cheater. After I told them to leave, I pointed out that just as I had no say in what happened, they had no say in whether I stayed or not. My soon-to-be ex-wife gave a half-hearted apology, saying she regretted the whole thing. I responded by telling her there's a big difference between regret and remorse. You regret it because of the consequences, because your life will never be the same. But our relationship will never be the same because you were completely unconcerned about what I wanted. She offered to answer any questions I had, no matter how uncomfortable. I told her the only question I really had was, why? Not so much why this guy, who was unattractive and far from ideal, but why someone else in the first place? She explained that cancer had terrified her. She felt like she was racing toward mortality, and stepping out of that tunnel was appealing. After years of being a wife and mother and focusing on the family, this was something she did just for herself, an escape. The guy had been interested in her for a while, and she knew he wouldn't turn her down. He was also completely different from me. I told her, If I were going to risk my marriage, the woman would have to be a serious upgrade from you. Then I added, I saw you and him coming out of the bar that night. This rephrased version conveys the same emotions and events, but with a smoother flow and slightly refined wording. Let me know if you'd like any adjustments. I saw you walk away from the bar, hand in hand, heading towards the hotel. I mentioned that you two seemed overly familiar and asked if something had been going on before this. She denied it, but who knows if that's the truth. I told her that after all the years we had spent together, your blatant lack of respect was shocking. I finished by saying I couldn't stay in the relationship if I accepted that level of disrespect, as I wouldn't be able to look at myself in the mirror. I expressed hope that we could part ways amicably and informed her that I had an appointment with a lawyer later in the week. I asked her again to find another place to stay, but she responded by saying she wasn't leaving and that we weren't getting divorced. She said she would give me all the time I needed to recover and that we'd work through this. She suggested marriage counseling, but I refused. Why would I need therapy when I've done nothing wrong? I had her served and gave her a notice to vacate since the house is my premarital asset. Though she moved in with her mom, she still comes by often, checking in or suggesting things like an open relationship or threesomes, efforts that seem desperate and pathetic. After repeatedly telling her she has to call before visiting, she seems to be slowly understanding that there is no future for us. She's mentioned she'll drag out the divorce as long as possible, but so far, she's been compliant. The hardest part of all this was telling my daughter about the divorce and explaining why, followed closely by her pleading for me to give her mom another chance. I doubt I'd be given the same consideration if I had been the one unfaithful. My soon-to-be ex-wife claims she will give me whatever I need. She suggested I consider attending marriage counseling as part of the divorce settlement, but I'm not interested. We went back and forth for a while, working out the practicalities of separation in our daily lives moving forward. At this point, we've only just agreed on the terms of the legal separation. As we move toward finalizing the divorce, my position might change, but for now, it's set. The house is a premarital asset, so she has no claim to it. The only things she could potentially go after are my pension, vehicles, and vacation property. However, I'd argue that she has lived rent-free for over 20 years and has her own money, plus an inheritance from her father. I might have offered some additional financial support in retirement, especially since she was a stay-at-home mom when our daughter was young, but that's the extent of it. I've received a lot of messages from friends regarding her friend group and our daughter, so I want to clear up any misconceptions. My daughter is not taking her mother's side. While she has always been close to her mom, she's very upset with her right now. Her initial reaction was shock, as she hoped we could work through things and stay together. Now she understands that's not going to happen and has been limiting her interactions with her mom. But at the end of the day, it's still her mother. As for her group of friends, some of their husbands were furious about how complicit their wives were in supporting the affair. Some even cut off contact with my wife, though that seems to have been forgotten now. Her best friend was the ringleader, and she seemed to take some twisted pleasure in encouraging the affair and creating situations where my wife and the other man would be in contact. She pushed it to the point that even her own husband started questioning her motives. It turns out she didn't like me at all, and this was her way of sticking it to me. I guess she got what she wanted. Her husband mentioned that he found some sexting messages in his wife's phone, but he's dealing with it on his end. We met up, and he apologized for his wife's involvement, but I don't hold him responsible, and he just wants to move on. As for me, I've decided not to date anyone for a while, and I don't see myself ever getting married again. That's it. I'm moving on, and I don't think I'll ever be able to forgive her. This version maintains the key details and emotions while offering a smoother, more concise flow. Let me know if you'd like any changes.